Hey, this is Todd. I hear a variation on a phrase a lot, and that phrase is it's the DM's job to make sure that the players have fun. And the more I think about it, the less I actually agree with it. And not only do I disagree with it, I think it leads to what can be an awkward dynamic. So before everyone gets up in arms, let me explain a little bit. D&D is a role-playing game. It's a game that's played by a number of players. One of those players takes on a particular role known as the referee, the GM, the DM, whatever you want to call it. It is the job of every one of these players of the game, whether you wear a player hat or the designated referee, DM, GM hat, to make sure that everybody else at the table is having fun. This is no different than any other board game you might play or sport that you might play. Right? If you think about it, you go to play hoops. Sure, you may be competitive or winning and losing, but ultimately you want to be playing with people who play a game that you can enjoy. If somebody is playing and they're playing in a way that's only for their enjoyment, you're probably not going to want to play with them for much longer. Same thing if you go to play Scrabble with someone and they play a vastly different style of game than you and one that you don't find fun, you are not going to want to play with them anymore. And D&D is the same. If you are a player, you should be looking at how can I play to make sure that not only I have fun, but the other people have fun too, and that goes for the other players, and it goes for the GM as well. But it is not something that is the sole responsibility of the GM. And I think when we phrase it like that, like it's the GM's responsibility to make sure you have fun, it absolves players from that responsibility. Does that mean if I buy in that as a player, I'm free to just sort of play for myself and do selfish, potentially jerky kind of moves because, hey, the GM's going to make up for it because it's really his job to make sure those other players have fun. My job is only for my own enjoyment. So let me go ahead and do this. I don't think that's the case. What I do think is that the GM's responsibility is to keep the game running. This can become such a broad subject that player happiness becomes part of running the game, right? Because if you don't have players, there's no game. So if I need to run the game as a GM, I need to keep the players happy. But I think that keeping them happy is a bridge too far. So let's get back to what the game is. The D&D is a role-playing game. It would be what we would call an asymmetrical game. Players do not have the same powers. It is not chess or checkers or Chinese checkers where you may have a side, but your side has the same pieces as the other side with the same capabilities. If you're playing a fighter, you are playing in some ways with a very different set of actions and powers than the person who's playing a monk, certainly than the person who's playing the wizard or the cleric. And then, of course, you have the GM, that special kind of player whose powers are vastly different than any of the other players. The GM's powers are granted to them, and it is very powerful because in many ways they become first among players, right? First among equals. They get to set the tone, set the rules, they set the world in motion, and they run it. So yes, they have some extra responsibilities, and that comes with the extra powers that they have. They have the powers to manipulate the world. That power gives them a lot of say in the game. So the GM has these special powers, and they use those powers to keep the game running. What do I mean by running the game? Some of it is just motion. Actions and reactions. The players are doing stuff, the world has to respond to create more opportunities to do stuff. That's a big part of running the game. There's also the meta stuff about running the game. Usually, not always, but usually the GM is the organizer of the game. They're definitely keeping track of all the materials. They usually, but not always, are doing things like scheduling. That's also part of running the game. Certainly, there's an aspect of running the game that is social. You may want to look at how you can get different players involved. That's all part of it. But ultimately, when it comes to the fun, making all the players, including GM, happy, that really has to arise out of the game itself. The idea is that we're playing a game that is fun. D&D is a fun game. Role-playing games are fun games. As a GM, as a table, a group of players, we come together and we say, hey, we're going to play D&D. We're going to play a certain kind of game. As a GM, it's my job to really deliver on that type of game. I talked about it in my settings video. You're the GM, you say, hey, we're going to play Lord of the Rings meets John Wick. Well, that would be a really cool combination. Are you in, are you out? People sign up, we're in, here's our characters. We set that up, great. As a GM, my job is to deliver that Lord of the Rings meets John Wick. That is my job. If I do that job well, and it's the game that everybody wants, and everybody says that they've wanted, John Wick meets Lord of the Rings, and we've all agreed to that, that should be fun, right? That's where I deliver fun. I deliver fun by getting that game running and maintaining it. That's where the fun comes from. If players aren't having fun, then they need to address it amongst the whole table as to why it's not fun. Is it that I thought I wanted Lord of the Rings meets John Wick, but I really don't? That's not fun. Okay, so maybe this isn't the game for you. And if it's the whole table thinking that way, then maybe we have to figure out what we're going to do. Change that setting. Change what we're doing. If it's just a particular player, then maybe that player needs to figure out a way that they can have fun with it, or they need to maybe play a different game and not play that game. That's one element of it. Obviously, if it's behavioral, that's something that a GM is usually tasked with handling. If one player is acting out and it's harming the fun of others. But the way I look at it is it's not the GM's responsibility to make sure it's fun. The responsibility is the table. It's on the table. The GM's responsibility is to keep that game running, to deliver on the type of game that hopefully in a session 0, you've talked with everybody, you figure out what kind of game you want. It's my job as a GM to try to deliver that game. And that's really where the fun comes from me as a GM, is that I have fun creating a John Wick meets Lord of the Rings style game. So there's the fun for me. That's my fun, is putting the players in that kind of scenario and deciding how they're going to do it. That's how I get my fun. My goal, my job isn't to make sure, hey, player A, you're happy. Player B, you're happy. Everyone's happy, having fun. The idea is that you're playing a game that's fun. If you enjoy the game, then you're having fun. If I'm running the game the way it should be, and everyone is playing the game the way it should be, then ergo, we will have fun. If people aren't having fun, then we have to look at that. Same way we would look at it if we were playing a board game or a sport. You look at it and you say, man, that guy's just ruining the fun for everybody. So we all got to talk to him. We all have to go about it. And granted, I know that the GM ends up getting a lot of that responsibilities, but ultimately your job as the GM, in my opinion, is to play the game that you promised to play. If you promise to be playing Lord of the Rings meets John Wick, then that is your job. And of course, I'm all about flexibility. I'm all about trying to make things work. But that's really where your responsibility as the GM lies, in my opinion. If you do your job the right way and you make it something that everybody signed off on and you deliver it that meets everyone's expectations, that's how everyone has fun. Not about you looking to please people on a meta level or please them. I think just that way can lie madness. It can be very hard to please everybody, and you try to please one person that ends up upsetting somebody else. It can be hard to do. Now, I know a lot of people probably come out of the woodwork saying, oh, no, I'm wrong. This is what we should be doing. And maybe I am wrong. It's just one man's opinion. But I felt like in my experience, if I get the game that I've signed up for, then I'm usually happy. If all the personalities mesh with me and I'm playing the game I want to play, I'm happy. It's a good game. Same with sports. Hey, you want to play basketball? I like basketball. If people play basketball and they're not jerky and we're all of similar skill levels so we don't feel overwhelmed, then it's a good game of basketball. I'm going to have fun. I don't need a special game of basketball that's catered to me, or someone's always going to pass to me or do something, or everyone's looking to make sure that I'm happy. I don't need any of that. Just give me basketball. Let's play basketball. And the same thing. Hey, it's D&D. I like D&D. It's a fun game. If you play a game that meets the expectations that you yourself are setting for, it's going to be fun. So go out there, have fun, but don't look to point to one particular party and say, hey, they're responsible for my fun. As a table, we're all responsible for each other's fun. So get a good group together, play D&D, have fun. Talk to you later.